What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so before I get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to the brother Isaiah Williams for the donation to the channel via the Cash App. Left a note saying, "Keep up the great work. One love, brother." Much respect to you for showing love to Too Raw for TV, aka Too Raw for Sports. Alright. So, one question that I got recently from a subscriber, a video request, was who do I think was the best two-way point guard in the NBA in the 1970s? And in my mind, I tend to think of three guys, right? Now, there's different candidates, but when you think of two-way players, think of players who play on a high level on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. And, of course, in today's NBA, that's something that you're seeing less and less of. But the three players that came up in my mind for the 70s, one is Dennis Johnson. However, Dennis Johnson was not a great shooter, all right? Dennis Johnson was not a great shooter. He was more of a slashing type player. Although as he got older, he did develop a decent jump shot, but he was never a great jump shooter. But in his earlier days with the Seattle Supersonics, in which he won an NBA championship in 1979 and a Finals MVP, and in his Phoenix Suns days, he was scoring 20, 21 points a game. And of course, we know how great a defender he was. Yet, at the same time, he didn't play the entire 1970s, or most of the 70s. So that disqualifies him a little bit. Then I would put up a guy like probably Calvin Murphy, the little man for the Houston Rockets. Very well known for his scoring ability. He was probably, I would say up there with Rick Barry as the best mid-range shooters in the NBA at that time. Scoring 17 points a game, 18 points a game for his career. When you consider he was 5'9" with no three-point line, that was pretty phenomenal. Had some big games. Had a 57-point game, which for many years was the most points scored by a Houston Rocket until James Harden. And of course, this isn't known today, but Calvin Murphy did play on a very high level on the defensive end. Very high level. And he was also a bit of an enforcer, despite the fact he was only 5'9" and 170 pounds. If I'm not mistaken, Calvin Murphy was, not only did I think I remember reading he took martial art lessons, and not only that, he could box. So even though he was a little guy, people didn't want to mess with him like that, you know what I mean? But the guy that I have to think of as the top two-way point guard, I have to give it, in my opinion, to Walt Frasier. I just got to give it to him. Walt Frasier, of course, had that great mid-range shot. He could slash occasionally, but he was 6'5", what it was, 185, 190 pounds, I think. In his best years, perennially always over 20 points per game. And he was doing that in an era where point guards really didn't necessarily shoot the ball that much. You know what I'm saying? Like, that just wasn't necessarily what point guards did. But he could facilitate, obviously. He could run the offense. But he could score, most definitely. He showed that in Game 7 of 1970 NBA Finals, when he had that 36.7 rebound, 19 assist performance. But he was also a great defender. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the early 1970s, if the Defensive Player of the Year award existed, he would have won one. At least one. Um, but I would have to give it to Walt Clyde Frazier if I had to go out and on a limb and pick one guy as far as point guards. Now Jerry West was a great defender, but Jerry West's best days were past him by the 1970s. Oscar Robertson, I wouldn't say was a great defender. Tremendous basketball player, one of the all-time greats, but wasn't an awful defender in his prime, but I wouldn't say he was a great defender. Gus Williams was not a great defender, who of course teamed up with a guy that was a great defender and Dennis Johnson with those Sonics backcourts, one of the great backcourts ever. Then of course you do have a guy like, you could put up Norm Van Leer, but I wouldn't say Norm was a great offensive player, but he was a great defensive point guard. So that's my opinion at least. Maybe I'm missing somebody in the equation. Maybe there's somebody that I'm forgetting about. I'm having a brain fart because I know there's some other players. One guy I think I would put in that equation as well. Now that I think about it, I think I would throw in JoJo White. I would throw JoJo White in that equation too. But I still would have Walt Frazier as number one. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.